you've been successful, you didn't get there on your own. You didn't get there on your own. I'm always struck by people who think, well, it must be because I was just so smart. There are a lot of smart people out there. It must be because I worked harder than everybody else. Let me tell you something. There are a whole bunch of hard-working people out there. If you were successful, somebody along the line gave you some help. There was a great teacher somewhere in your life. Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we had that allowed you to thrive. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. The internet didn't get invented on its own. Government research created the internet, so then all the companies could make money off the internet. The point is that when we succeed because of our individual initiative, but also because we do things together. There's some things, just like fighting fires, we don't do on our own. I mean, imagine if everybody had their own fire service. That'd be a hard way to organize fighting fires. So we say to ourselves, ever since the founding of this country, you know what, there's some things we do better together. That's how we funded the GI Bill. That's how we created the middle class. That's how we built the Golden Gate Bridge or the Hoover Dam. That's how we invented the internet. That's how we sent a man to the moon. We rise or fall together as one nation and as one people, and that's the reason I'm running for president, because I still believe in that idea. You're not on your own. We're in this together.
Welcome back to Steel on Steel. John Lefter here with you, and that was the voice of our president, President Barack Obama, this week in a campaign speech. You have to look at what is implied behind what the president said. I heard this speech, and I was very irritated right from the start, because the implication is, okay, you did what you did in business, but it was really the collective that did it for you. Now, we do two things together as a society. We put schools together. That's what we originally did with public education. We have fire departments, police departments. The purpose of government is to form those organizations and functions that we really do need people to come together to do. We do it better as a group of people. But that's not the implication behind what the president is saying right here, because that's not his track record. That's not his mode of thought. The president's mantra is that if we just keep soaking the producers, those people who keep producing for the economy, we'll be able to deal with our economic problems. The government, if we just had everybody pay their fair share, meaning the wealthy pay more, when the top 20% now pay 70% of the country's taxes? And I'm not wealthy by any such standard. I'm very much middle class, if that. It's been a struggle to keep going. That it was because of the collective that you are where you are, and therefore we should keep paying into all of these social programs because we can do better together. The problem is there's nothing left to produce. He said the middle class was built because of this. No, it wasn't. The vibrant middle class in this country was built because of a group of entrepreneurs, little business people who had the freedom, the tax freedom, the economic freedom, and the regulatory freedom to begin developing businesses on their own with a minimum of government interference. You have to look at the implications of what he was implying, but he got a lot of business owners really upset. And I'll tell you why. He said, you really didn't build this. It was everybody else that helped you build it. Excuse me. And I mean, excuse me. As I built businesses in the past, that collective was nowhere to be found. The collective didn't share in the sleepless nights, wondering if your financial gamble was going to pay off. The collective did not sit with you and help you figure a way to pay off the massive debts that sometimes you had to incur in order to keep your business going. The collective wasn't there when you had to work 60-hour weeks in order to keep your business going. We're people who collect a paycheck, take it, and go home, where teachers only work 9 months of the year, and they get to have a 3-month vacation every year. Wow, I'd sure like that. I can't step foot away from my business without making sure that everything is covered, which limits the amount of time. And that's true of any business you're in if you're the business owner. As a matter of fact, for the most part, quite often people who are small business entrepreneurs, remember, the ones that create 90% of the jobs in this country, don't really get to take vacations. They simply get to shift when they do the work. So if they take a couple of days off, they have to come back and double the workload or pay somebody else to do it in order to get it done. There is no free lunch or free vacation. Now, especially in the area of education, this is where I chafe about it. Because for half of my career, I was in public education from 0 through 12, or from K through 12. And half the time I was in Catholic school, private school, paid for education. They talk about giving back some of what you earn. Well, let me tell you about giving it back. Number one, when I was in school, the teachers' salaries were paid for by the taxes collected from my parents at that time. They were given back. They were paid. In private school, we had to pay tuition to go, despite the fact that at the very same time we had to pay taxes as well, because we wanted to get a better education than what at the time was even a good education in public school, but ever since the 1950s and 60s has seen such serious decline that it's totally dysfunctional now as far as our competitors around the world, and the only people who don't seem to recognize that are teachers. When it came to educating my children, it was already in such a state of disrepair that I had to homeschool my children at tremendous personal monetary expense and commitment in terms of time, especially on the part of my wife, in order to do that. No one has given back to me for that. Maybe my kids will do it when there's no longer any Social Security and I reach my old age. When I did take courses, even in college, in my alma's mater keep calling me about, wouldn't you like to support XYZ? My wife does too, both her undergraduate and postgraduate work. And my implication there is, I paid one heck of a lot of tuition when I was there, and I'm not sure why I need to pay afterwards to endow the college with any more. As a matter of fact, when I was in my last 4 years of college, I worked full-time at a radio station, and I went to school full-time. I ran for 18 hours a day, 5 days a week in order to make it work. And the collective wasn't there to help me. The teachers didn't spend the sleepless nights fretting negative cash flows, wondering if a gamble was going to take off and work. And all of the other sector that supposedly helped me as well, and all of us small business owners out there, they didn't have to pay more in taxes, which small business owners do if you're a Schedule C type of business. You pay twice the amount of Social Security tax that everybody else has to pay. They didn't have all of the burden of regulations and paperwork imposed by government and have to deal with the nonsense and the hassle of that, in addition to getting their jobs done. Sometimes it would take days to comply with government requirements, depending on the business that you might be in, and you would have to comply with that. You weren't making money on that. You were losing money on this deal as you run around dealing with that. But what did they do? They succeeded because they had what a lot of other people don't have in the culture. They had personal initiative, and they took tremendous risk, which a lot of other people in paid jobs, and especially in the government sector, just don't have to take. And when you go through all of this stomach acid generating nonsense that it takes to get a small business off the ground, with all of the risk and the long hours that have to be worked, much longer than people who collect paychecks, and especially unionized people who are in government collecting checks from people who are out here sweating it to be able to pay taxes to make their jobs possible. When you get to the end of your life, then government wishes to rush in and take anywhere between a third to a half of what it was you built up because you should be paying it back and not allowing you to transfer it on to your kids. Now, about the whole bunch of hardworking people. I know there are a lot of hardworking people in the country. But I've seen a lot of people on the receiving end of this little transfer mechanism that we talk about. I've seen the Section 8 housing. I've seen a lot of the people on so-called disability. I've seen all of the people gaming a free money system rather than producing worthwhile things into the economy and for everyone else. I've seen what a joke it really is. And the idea that we are all coming together because we can all do it better together really means government can do it better if they siphon off more of what it is you worked very hard to produce and transfer only a small amount of that into the outward intended receivers. Believe me, bureaucracies consume incredible amounts of money. You know, I could think of all sorts of small businessmen, from farmers to doctors, who spend long, long hours doing what it is they did, took all the risks, all of the education that they had to get, for which they paid. They already paid into the system. But to give you a real-life example, I'm thinking about a very close friend of mine who co-owned a business with his father. It's worth about $6 million in assets. That's the business. Now, his father passed away last year, and he has to decide what to do with the business. The business in good years might make between $150,000 and $250,000 a year profit. That's in good years. That's exactly the tax group that the president wants to go after with bigger and heavier taxes. This year, they're barely breaking even. As a matter of fact, they're having to subsidize part of the business because of the new inheritance laws that are coming in 2013. We've talked about that. His attorneys and his CPAs have said your business has got to go. Because if you don't, you will owe government in the state he's in and the federal government $2 million in death taxes. That's $2 million out of a $6 million business, which right now is making nothing. Where does he get the money to pay that? That's why the business is going to have to go, and the 8 people that he employs full-time are going to have to go as well. You see, there is a connection between health care, which has nothing to support it, raising taxes, the soaring unemployment rate, and having government sit on the backs of the people who create 90% of the jobs. We're already back into a recession, and we're headed towards a depression unless the country snaps to its feet and Congress does something and realizes you can't choke to death the very people that are producing the tax revenues you hope to transfer to other people. My message to President Obama is, at the conclusion of this little diatribe, I remember hearing President Clinton back in 1998 say, "We just want to help you succeed in the 21st century." As a small business owner, Mr. President, referring to Mr. Obama now, I don't need your help to succeed in the 21st century, but I do need to have you get off of our backs so the people who create jobs can do so. I'm John Leffler. We're at SteelOnSteel.com, and the program is Steel on Steel.
This has been Steel on Steel with John Leffler, an alternative information source for politics, religion, and global events. Steel on Steel is produced by Carol Leffler, engineered by Glenn Meyer. The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast are not necessarily those of the staff, management, owners, or advertisers of this radio station. Steel on Steel can be heard 24 hours a day on the internet at SteelOnSteel.com. Tapes or online subscriptions support the ongoing program production. For more information, call toll-free 1-800-829-5646. That's 1-800-829-5646. This is the Steel on Steel Radio Consortium.